Years ago, when newsletters were more prominent and they came in the mail, I remember receiving one in Cincinnati, Ohio from, I think it was the church in Houston. I remember the minister, Webster Kitchell. And Webster was one of the old lions, and I was in my 30s struggling to understand what all this was about. And I found his minister's column in the newsletter really interesting. I kept it for a long time, but it's long gone, but I remember what was in it. It went something like this. He said, it's come to my attention that several people are concerned that the variety of my subjects for my sermons are limited. And there's some complaints about what I talk about on Sunday. And he said, and I must recognize that's true, but I'm going to keep talking the same thing till y'all get it right. I'm not sure whether that was more tongue-in-cheek, but he sort of disarmed the crowd, I guess, for a while there. He went on to serve a long time there, so I guess he knew what he was talking about. And I'm persuaded that standing up here 52, 36, how many times it is a year, to do Garrison Keillor, or something akin to that, without the music, just the monologue, is a challenging thing. So this morning I want to try to do the boilerplate sermon, the one that summarizes it all and we don't have to worry about it till next Sunday, and I'll do it again. Only in Tarpon Springs. For what purpose? For what purpose are human beings? For what purpose is the community of faith called Unitarian Universalist? Kurt Vonnegut was one of our great writers and certified card-carrying Unitarians. He wrote in Cat's Cradle this: in the beginning, God created the earth, and he looked upon it in his cosmic loneliness. And God said, let us make living creatures out of the mud, so the mud can see what we have done. And God created every living creature that now moveth, and one was man. Mud as man alone could speak. God leaned close to mud as man sat. Man looked around and then spoke. What is the purpose of all this? He, man, asked politely. Everything must have a purpose? Asked God. Certainly, said man. Then I leave it up to you to think of one for all this, said God. And he went away. Gautama Buddha said, your purpose in life is to find your purpose and give your whole heart and soul to it. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the Yankee philosopher, and Leo Rostand, the Jewish philosopher, a century later. I cannot believe that the purpose of life is to be happy. I think the purpose of life is to be useful, to be responsible, and to be compassionate. It is above all to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made some difference that you lived at all. Stephen Crane wrote, and man said to the universe, sir, I exist. However, replied the universe, that fact has not created in me a sense of obligation. What are we for? What are we for? See, we have handed to us an agenda. We're born into a story, into a time, into a culture. We're born into this period. We in this room stretch about 100 years or so. I don't know how I did that math, but just bear with me. We are a profile, a fragment, a glimpse into a certain culture and a certain time. What purpose has our lives been for? What are they for now? Most of our lives have been used to learn not what they're for. Let me go back again. Most of our lives have been used to relearn what we need to be about. And the saddest thing is to come in our 60s and 70s and 80s and look back and say, oh, I got it all wrong. Or then we have all the toys and we sort of con ourselves to say we got it right. And that's sort of sad too. The purpose of life is pretty simple. To learn all we can, give all we can, share all we can. It's not highfalutin stuff. But I want to ask you, you can answer the question, what do you honor as a well-lived life? What does it look like to you when you look at the heroes of our culture, the heroes that have been lifted up to us over our lives? Who are the ones that stand out? Are they the ones with the statues, with the great buildings? Or are those that teacher in the third grade who looked at you with a different look and saw something else in you? Or that mother who didn't know how to be a mother but stayed with you anyway, and somehow y'all worked out your problems and somehow you could recognize at some point how important you were to one another. Who are the people who live the well-lived lives for you? Who showed you what life is for, what its purpose is for? Think about them. Wonder about them. Lift them up and remember them. Well, how did they do it? Have some magic? Did they have some rule that they applied? Did they have some catechism they kept saying to you? In the old days, the folks who stood in pulpits like this and other places who had a better grip on the certainty that some of us have today set up catechisms. For what purpose have human beings been created? To praise God and honor Him in all their works. Ooh, what does that look like today? What does that look like today, we as post-Christian or post-religious mostly? The old truths don't work anymore, or we see behind them. We see that most of them were absolute, set for power plays where one class was over another. I got the information, I've got the magic you don't, and I'll let you have it for a certain obligation you make to me. You give me your money, you give me your obedience, and I'll share with you the secret of eternity. I will bring the grace of heaven right into your own life, and you will be whole, and you will live with God forever, peacefully in the hereafter. Right now, go back to work. Do your job. We have crops to bring in. We have people to feed. Well, that's true, but it's not true. See, it lacks an honesty. It lacks an integrity. When we can say with all honesty, maybe the purpose of our lives is to recognize the wonder of our lives, to recognize the interdependence of what we're a part of, to recognize that which history called God is just that wholeness that we found ourselves a part of. And if we look real close and if we sit down with honesty and we really talk about it, we can see some rules. We can see some patterns. We can see some laws. What has science done for us? They've taught us the laws of creation. Mostly. We're still learning. We'll never know it all. I can't believe we will, because it's ultimately mystery. But we find out enough to know to structure our lives for some safety, some food, some security, well, most of the world. But look at where we've come. 440,000 years maybe, we've known one another and been able to talk to one another, something like that. When did we fly? When did Orville and those guys and those others who got up? We're on the moon now. We're going to Mars. I've got another person's heart in my chest. What are we doing here? We're doing magic. And we're doing it because we're creative, responsive agents. The human being's purpose is to be creative and adaptive, to respond to the givens of life and make it better. I presided over a memorial service yesterday. A sad occasion, 57-year-old woman, 10 or 11 months with pancreatic cancer, gone. That don't supposed to happen. Yes, it does. Each one of us in this room have a finite possibility of our lives. We meet again, one of us may not be here in body. That's the reality. And I'm not pulling off some old preacher trick. I'm just trying to get us to be aware of how precious the reality we exist in is. For what purpose are human beings? Human beings are to recognize the wonder of life and adapt to it. And finding codes and noble values to apply to its living. It's not to be about how many toys I can get before I die. how many friends I can even make, how many degrees I can get, how many people love me. The purpose of life is to be of significance, where you are with who you are. It's to love the unlovable sometimes. It's to look at someone and say, you are the sorriest son of a gun I've ever seen. You are a waste of human life. But you're in my way and I've got to negotiate a relationship with you. How are we going to be to one another? You want to be my friend and maybe we walk in this loneliness together and see if we can sort out some stuff? You look to the left, I'll look to the right. We can do it together. You show me somebody who's made it on their own and I'll show you a liar or somebody who hasn't recognized anything. We come into this world as dependent human beings. I think one of the few animals who can't make it on our own. Well, that's not true. A lot of animals can't make it on their own. The giving of life as we apply our learnings is the same old stuff that religion taught us 1,000 years ago. We are dependent on something bigger than us. We are called to relationship to it. We have some power, some freedom, some influence on how we will be in relationship. Will we be subservient? Will we expect God to rescue us? We expect us to go our ways, be the sinners that we can be, live off target, live ways we know that are destructive, continue to make the bad choices after we've had our lessons. How do we do that? How do we keep doing that? Well, I think that's silly. I think it's wrong-headed. It's going to be us to be the co-creators. It's going to be us to make the mistakes. It's going to be us to test our values and test our activities to see if they work for us. And then at the end, we look back and we did a lot better. We haven't got it right. And I'm one of those who always sees things that are wrong. I always see the hole. I don't see the donut. What's the matter with this cake? Oh, it's a donut. Okay, it's supposed to have a hole in it. That's how you can cook it. Well, a great idea. But see, if you're expecting a cake and you get a donut, you're missing something, aren't you? Well, maybe you start looking at things a little differently. Maybe that's the lesson of the donut and the cake. The idea is for us to be engaged in life in such a sensitive and reactionary, responsive way, not reactionary, responsive way, to understand how to apply our living to a higher ideal. What is that higher ideal? We are somebody. We're related to the whole. What we do matters. Can we get around that? What we do matters. What do the people call Unitarian Universalists raised up for? One of my colleagues has got our quick answers that's ready for TV and primetime media. You ready for it? Unitarian Universalists are to love the hell out of life. Come on, it'll grow on you. Unitarian Universalists are to love the hell out of life. Well, that's sort of cute, but it's not bad. It's better than the mumbling we usually do in the elevator. Well, we got to be freedom of your food, and you can believe what you want to do, and you can, whatever. And we got to be reasonable. Just smile here and say we're unabashed lovers. We think you're worthy, but we know better. The idea of being a Unitarian Universalist is to be courageous enough and brave enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And I'm willing to be in community and regard and relationship with other people to struggle with the reality of really not ultimately knowing. To walk in love, a relationship that says you're like me, we're a part of one another, and I must regard you as I regard myself, that's what love is. Love's not Hallmark cards. Love is not sentimentality. Love is tears, pain, scars that we walk with one another in the reality of the toughness and ambiguity and meanness that is life sometimes. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for those who want guarantees. I'm going to get to heaven because Jesus loves me. I'm going to get to heaven. I'm going to get to purposeful life because I keep the rules. No, you're going to be engaged without the rules. You're going to be in situations where you can't count on authority. You're going to be in situations where right doesn't matter. It's just going to be you against the choice of what you make and how you engage. And you put yourself in the position and say, I'm here. If you got to cut me down for your ideology, I guess that's the way it goes. I'll try not to strike back. Look what Jesus taught. Look what the Gautama taught. Look what Dr. King taught. Look what Gandhi taught. Look at what the people who we venerate, who have touched us, have said to us of what we're capable of. And then we hide in our commercialism, we hide in our corporatism, and we hide in our violence that that's going to make things right. It's not. For what purpose are people? They are to be agents of love in a world that's really ambiguous. Is really all right, let me start again. We are to be lovers in the world, and the world doesn't understand what love's power is. Fear is a lot easier place to go. Differences are a lot easier to emphasize than it is to be one with another in this small globe, in this magic called the cosmos, relating, trying to save life for the future. We are true lifesavers engaged in a loving relationship that says, let's be one with another. Let's care about life as much as we can. And in the short time we have, let's live it to its fullest. And not waste it. Not waste it. I mean, we can feel good every day. We can find some drugs. We can find some isms that'll make us superior and kind and smile all the time. No, I don't trust people that smile all the time. I want somebody that frowns at me because they know what it means to hurt. And if you know what it means to hurt, you know what it means to be a human being. Because you know what it means to have looked for something and been disappointed. And maybe that's the story of the human condition. We're still children in some degrees. We're still looking for that special present. We're still hoping we'll find it. In the meantime, we ignore all the gifts that are given along the way. I'll close our time with these words. And I'm aware that there may be a lot of people in this room that haven't heard these words, and that's what makes me feel good. All I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but here in the sand pile at Sunday school. These are the things I learned. Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you find them. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some, and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic. Hold hands and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup? The roots go down and the plant goes up, and nobody really knows how or why. But we're all like that. Goldfish and hamsters and white mice and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup, they all die. So do we. And then remember the Dick and Jane books and the first word you learned and the biggest word of all, look. For what purpose? To look and love the hell out of life. Amen. May it be so.